Well, if you've been with me the last few days, you see there's kind of a theme that's starting to develop here, and it's we've been talking about the fools. We've talked about how that they say things and say them to be manipulative or even to be intentionally hurtful. Basically, they're gossips oftentimes, and gossiping is one of those things that's part of the human dynamic. It's not always bad, but just in our increasing sense, it's becoming worse and worse. Anyway, let me get to the proverb. We're in Proverbs 18:8, and it reads this way. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the inmost parts. So, what is gossip? Well, gossip is someone who shares information about other people. They can do it through a whisper. They can do it through storytelling. That's not a bad thing. I mean, it's not bad to talk about other people. You know, some people say, well, I don't talk about other people. Well, do you have relationships? I have stories that I tell about friends that we have laughed together about, and they're funny stories, and they create a bit of humanness, but they also show that we all have our foibles. And, you know, you get together with the family, my kids tease me mercilessly. I mean, it's like they point out things about me, and the only thing that bothers me about that is that they're all true. But what can I say? This is who I am. I'm not pretending to be somebody else, right? So it's not bad to tell stories about other people. I mean, when Dorcas died, that all the women came and told Peter about all the good things that she had done for them. We could call that gossiping. It's part of the social dynamic. The thing that it makes gossip bad is when we're secretly, especially, spreading damaging information. It calls it in Proverbs 6, he called it the sowing of discord. In other words, it's like putting weed seed into wheat seed and causing the harvest to be destroyed. And that's why the whole notion or emphasis in their conversation is this covert and it's to be divisive. And you wonder, why would somebody be divisive? Well, it's an interesting thing about human personalities. You know, we all want to be the center of attention. Come on, let's just admit it. We all want to be the center of attention. And so as a result, if we're having difficulties standing out, sometimes it's just a whole lot easier and more effective and quicker to just simply say, have you heard about, and to share something that's not flattering or diminishing about the other person, because suddenly everybody's paying attention to you, because we gobble it up like tasty morsels is what he says with the phrase here. Choice morsels is an interesting one. In the Hebrew, it means eating delicacies. It's a tasty little morsel. It's an irresistible treat. It's like, well, it was like yesterday when I was grilling smash burgers and lading them heavily with bacon, layers of bacon and cheese one upon another. I told my wife, 15 years ago, they told me that was a heart attack that I was eating. Now they tell me that's really healthy. All that protein and fat. I mean, may the medical world and the scientific world get their minds straightened out. But anyway, the whole idea is something that's very gourmet. And where I was going with all of that is I had some leftover bacon just sitting there. And I couldn't resist just ripping off little pieces and putting it in my mouth, because I think there are two foods that God made that are beyond description. One is popcorn and the other one is bacon. So it's this idea of something that just, it tastes so good. You can taste it before it even touches your mouth. And that's kind of what he says that gossip becomes, that people consume gossip with the same eagerness that they enjoy rich food. Let's just be honest. Social media is predicated on the spreading of gossip. Now, this is social media, I admit it. But what I want to do is speak things into people's lives that will help them to grow and to live life more effectively, more successfully, because they're submitting themselves to the counsels of God and not just somebody else's advice. But there are other people who basically literally make up stories, create videos, not to entertain, but to really draw people in, that because we find that negative information travels so much faster than positive does. And so he says what happens was when people feed up this stuff that's salacious gossip, he says it goes down into the inmost parts. And here's really the hard part of it. I find people who handle bad gossip effectively usually will say to me, well, I read this, or I looked at this, or I heard this, and I said, no, it doesn't the smell, it doesn't meet the smell test. I don't want to know anymore. And they walk away from it. But problem is that for most people, it takes their minds off of what's wrong with their own life, where they're messed up. We particularly enjoy seeing people who are in high profile positions being brought down. We call it basically cut down to their size, because we feel like we have no size. We feel like we're cut down, and we find a deliciousness, if you will, in them getting their just desserts, even if they don't deserve what they get. I mean, I've had to catch myself because I've seen certain celebrities who have been profiled by various articles and in these pictures that have been AI enhanced, I'm sure. And it's very unflattering, very destructive. I sit back and say, why should I care about this person? I mean, I'm not going to watch their movies, listen to their music. I'm not going to go to their concert. I'm not going to listen to their advice on anything. I mean, if they're saying something is wrong, I'll identify what's wrong with it. But I don't want to spend my time talking about them as a person unless it's directly germane to some kind of criminality or dishonesty in their life. So the whole point is that you can tell the difference, because once it becomes salacious, and you know what the word salacious means? It means tastes good to the mouth. Your mouth starts watering, before you even get it, like my dog does, where he starts licking his lips before just the mention of certain food groups in his life. You want a treat? Man, he starts licking his lips. And that's what that whole salaciousness is about. But see, the problem is that it doesn't just stay in your mouth. You don't chew it and then spit it out. What you do is it enters into your body. It enters into your mind. It becomes a permanent place in your mind, so that you see that person or you hear their name and immediately you go there. It affects you emotionally. Then your emotions begin to saying, yeah, I don't like them, or I don't trust them, or I don't feel safe around them. Not based upon any kind of personal experience, just the information that you allowed to take root within your own mind and begin to control how you feel about something or someone. And then it becomes part of your memory. And once it gets into your memory, it's pretty hard to erase. I mean, you just really have to ask God to erase a bad memory. Because what ends up doing, it shapes our attitudes and our actions. It shapes our attitudes towards that person or any person that reminds us of that person. When you talk about people who said, well, I was hurt by the church and I don't go to church anymore. Well, what they're doing is they started with letting this thing, they ate some salacious gossip. It began to take root in there. It's planted in their minds. It shapes their attitudes and their actions. And what does that come up? They walk away from God or anything that has to do with God because they're now controlled by that. The old saying, everybody's heard it, I think. Anybody that's in the Western world or over 3 has heard it, that someone once observed, a lie can travel around the world while truth is putting on its shoes. And there's something about that, because to tell the truth about something a lot of times isn't that interesting. And I say that as somebody who likes to lecture and who loves to talk about a lot of historical minutiae that other people don't quite see the significance of. And I would just simply say I focus on the minutiae because I have discovered the significance that little things grow into big things that shape and change a world, and they shape and change individuals. But the bottom line is that once you hear gossip, it's hard to unhear it. Once it's planted, its colors can't help but show how we view another person. Even if that information proves to be false or incomplete, we're marked by that. And some people, again, I say, why would somebody do that? I talked about before, because it allows us not to have to look at ourselves. I said some time ago, and I'll repeat it again because I think it's a very important truism. The hardest righteousness to address is self-righteousness, because none of us are really truly righteous in and of ourselves. We have no inner righteousness. I mean, we do some right things and we have wrong things. So we're not righteous in the Jesus sense of righteous. But at the same time, we're not totally given over to unrighteousness. But the fact is that when we look at somebody else's, what we perceive as their unrighteous, whether it's true or not, then we feel a superiority to that person. And the more inferior you feel, the more you feel superior. I remember years ago there was in our community, and I don't know who it was, but I saw this bumper sticker, and I found out later it was some kind of campaign. It said, "Spokane doesn't suck." And immediately the thought in my mind was, if it doesn't, then why do you have to even say it? By saying that, you're implying that it does suck. Now, I don't believe that's true. I'm not going along with it, but it was really not understanding human psychology. Essentially, you were putting into people's minds the idea that Spokane sucks. Now, Spokane has its problems, and with our current political leadership, we're finding a way how to aggravate those problems, but that's another story for another time. But the whole point is that it shapes our view of things like that, because I couldn't get out of my mind, start looking for things. What about my city sucks? It just got me going in that direction. And that's the same way. I've had people make accusations about me, and then somebody will be sitting in our church, they'll visit or something, and they're sitting there the whole time just kind of watching me, waiting for me to prove what this person says. And unfortunately, sometimes I do, because what that person didn't like that was truth. But that's another story. But the whole point is, I think it proves, even the thing later proves to be false or incomplete, or they say, well, I discovered that you're not like that at all. It's taken you on a bypass. You've been on this journey through all these country roads that lead you ultimately to nowhere distinct, and you find later on you may have to retrace your tracks spiritually and even relationally sometimes. Well, I hope all that makes sense. But we'll finish up this part of the Proverbs tomorrow. God bless you. Go in His grace.